At 79, Edward Harrington was a man of immense wealth but little joy. His sprawling mansion on the hills overlooked the city like a lonely sentinel, filled with priceless art and antiques that had long ceased to bring him pleasure. Since losing his beloved wife Margaret 5 years ago, each day blended into the next in a haze of emptiness. On this particular autumn afternoon, Edward had ventured downtown to his favorite cafe, a small reprieve from the silence of his estate. He sat by the window, watching raindrops race down the glass while nursing a cup of coffee that had grown cold. The cafe bustled with life around him, conversations and laughter he felt disconnected from. That's when he noticed her, a young girl, perhaps 12 or 13, standing at the counter. Her clothes were clean but worn, her sneakers scuffed at the toes. She counted coins carefully from a small fabric purse, her expression falling as the cashier shook his head. Not enough. Edward watched as she tucked the purse away, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. Before she could turn to leave, he found himself rising from his chair, his knees protesting the sudden movement. "Please allow me," he said, approaching the counter. The girl looked up, startled by his presence. Her eyes were startlingly blue, reminding him of summer skies from his youth. "What would you like?" "I just wanted a sandwich," she answered quietly. "For me and my mom. She's not feeling well today." Edward nodded to the cashier. "The sandwich, and perhaps a soup as well? And a slice of that chocolate cake." He turned back to the girl. Everyone deserves cake on a rainy day. For the first time, she smiled a genuine smile that transformed her face, and, oddly, seemed to warm something long cold inside Edward's chest. "I'm Edward," he said, extending his hand as they waited for the order. "I'm Lily," she replied, her small hand disappearing in his. "Thank you, sir. This is very kind." When the food arrived, Edward found himself asking, "May I walk you home? These streets can be slippery in the rain." Lily hesitated, studying him with a wisdom beyond her years before, nodding. "It's not far." As they stepped into the drizzle, Edward holding his umbrella over them both, he couldn't explain the strange lightness in his steps. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of purpose. Something about this child's quiet dignity moved him in ways he couldn't articulate. Little did Edward know that this simple act of kindness would unravel a story that would change his life forever. Lily led Edward through narrow streets to a modest apartment building with peeling paint and a flickering entrance light. She moved with the confidence of familiarity, nodding to an elderly man sweeping the lobby. "We're on the 3rd floor," she explained. "The elevator doesn't work most days." Edward followed her up the stairs, noting how she slowed her pace for him without making it obvious, a small kindness that touched him deeply. At apartment 3C, Lily hesitated. "My mom doesn't like strangers," she whispered, "but I think she'll like you. Just ... She gets tired easily." Inside, the apartment was small but meticulously clean. Faded curtains framed windows that overlooked the city, and a few well-tended plants brought life to the humble space. From another room, a soft voice called out, "Lily, is that you?" "Yes, Mom. I brought lunch and a friend." A woman appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily on a walking cane. Despite her apparent fatigue, she carried herself with grace. Her face, though lined with pain, retained traces of remarkable beauty. When she saw Edward, her eyes widened in shock. "Edward?" she whispered, her free hand flying to her throat. The bag of food slipped from Edward's fingers, landing with a thud on the worn carpet. "Claire?" His voice cracked on the name. "Claire Summers?" 30 years vanished in an instant. He was seeing her again, the young dancer who had captured his heart before he'd met Margaret, the woman who had disappeared from his life without explanation. Lily looked between them, confusion evident on her face. "Mom, you know him?" "Claire's." Knuckles whitened around her cane. "Lily, could you please take the food to the kitchen? Mr. Harrington and I need to talk." When Lily reluctantly left, Claire gestured to the sofa. "Please sit. I never thought I'd see you again." Edward lowered himself into the seat, his mind racing. 30 years, Claire? You vanished without a word." "I had my reasons," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "Very good reasons. And now? What twist of fate brings me to your door, after all this time?" Edward asked, unable to tear his gaze from her face, cataloging the changes time had wrought. Claire's eyes drifted toward the kitchen, where Lily could be heard unpacking the food. "Not fate, Edward, blood." The implication hit him like a physical blow. He glanced toward the kitchen, at the girl with the startlingly blue eyes, and felt the world tilt beneath him. "She's yours," Claire confirmed, her voice barely audible. "I was going to tell you, but then you announced your engagement to Margaret. Your family's company was finally taking off. ICOULDN, single quotes T. ... I wouldn't be the one to derail your life." Edward felt as though he couldn't breathe. "So you left? Raised our child alone?" His voice rose slightly before he caught himself. "I had a right to know, Claire." "Yes, you did," she admitted, tears gathering in her eyes. "It was wrong of me. But I was 23, terrified, and you were building an empire. Your parents made it very clear that a dancer with no pedigree wasn't suitable for their son." The mention of his parents' cold, calculating people who had measured everything by status and wealth sent a chill through Edward. "They knew? They spoke to you?" Claire nodded. "They offered money, which I refused. But they convinced me that staying would destroy everything you were working for. So I left." "And Lily?" Edward asked, his throat tight with emotion. "She thinks her father died before she was born. A car accident." Claire's fingers twisted in her lap. "She's never questioned it." The kitchen door opened, and Lily emerged with a tray carefully arranged with their lunch. Edward watched her, this child who moved with Claire's grace, but had his mother's determined chin, his own eyes. "I made tea," Lily announced, setting the tray down. "Mom always says tea makes difficult conversations easier." Edward caught Claire's gaze over their daughter's head. So much lost time, so many missed moments, first steps, school plays, birthdays. A lifetime of fatherhood condensed into a single overwhelming realization. "Thank you, Lily," he managed, his voice rough with unshed tears. As they ate, Edward learned that Claire had been a dance instructor until a car accident 5 years ago left her with chronic pain and limited mobility. Lily, at just 13, had stepped up to help care for her mother while maintaining excellent grades. "She's extraordinary," Claire said softly, watching Lily clear the dishes. "Just like her father." Later, as Edward prepared to leave, promising to return the next day, Lily walked him to the door. "You knew my mom a long time ago?" Edward looked down at his daughter, this miracle he never knew existed, and felt his heart expand painfully in his chest. "Yes, I did. She was the most beautiful dancer I'd ever seen." Lily smiled. "She still dances sometimes, when her legs don't hurt too much. Just around the living room. It makes her happy." A tear slipped down Edward's cheek before he could stop. I'd like to see that someday." "You will," Lily said with the simple confidence of youth. "I think you'll be coming back a lot." Over the following weeks, Edward became a fixture in Claire and Lily's lives. He arrived bearing groceries, books, and once, a small keyboard when Lily mentioned an interest in music. Each visit peeled back layers of his daughter's personality, her quick wit, her compassion, her determination that mirrored his own. With Claire, conversations that began awkwardly gradually softened into reminiscence and cautious planning. She refused his offer to move them into his home, but accepted his help with medical bills and Lily's education fund. Pride, Edward discovered, was another trait his daughter had inherited. On a crisp Saturday morning, Edward waited nervously in his car while Lily ran upstairs to help Claire down. Today marked their first outing as a family, a concept that still felt surreal to him. "Is this too much?" he asked Claire as he helped her into the passenger seat, catching the grimace she tried to hide. "We can do this another day. I've spent too many days watching life from windows," Claire replied, squeezing his hand. "I'm ready for this." They drove to the botanical gardens, where Claire and Edward had once spent countless hours in their youth. Lily raced ahead on the paths while Edward pushed Claire's wheelchair, both of them watching their daughter's joy with matching expressions of wonder. "She flourishes under your attention," Claire observed. "Every day she has new questions about you, about your life." "I have 13 years to make up for," Edward replied, his voice thick with emotion. Claire turned to look at him, sunlight catching the silver in her once auburn hair. "We can't reclaim lost time, Edward, but we can make the most of what remains." At the pond, Lily returned with 3 bags of breadcrumbs for the ducks. As they fed the birds together, Edward found himself studying his daughter's profile, memorizing every detail. "Mr. Harrington?" Lily asked, interrupting his thoughts. "Edward," he gently corrected. "Remember," she nodded, hesitating. "Edward, if you knew my mom long ago, did you ... Did you also know my father?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Edward looked to Claire, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Lily," he began, his heart pounding, "there's something important we need to discuss. Something that might be difficult to understand at first." As ducks circled in the pond and visitors strolled past, a family's truth began to unfold in the autumn sunlight, a truth delayed by decades, but no less powerful in its revelation. The reading of the will was held in Edward's study, sunlight streaming through tall windows onto the assembled group. It had been 5 years since that rainy day when a young girl counting coins had changed the course of his life. Edward Harrington, age 84, had passed peacefully in his sleep after a brief illness, but not before ensuring his affairs were meticulously arranged. Lily, now 18 and preparing for medical school, sat beside her mother, their hands tightly clasped. "To my daughter, Lily Claire Harrington," the lawyer read, "I leave not only the bulk of my estate, but the most precious gift I received in my long life, the chance to know and love you, however briefly." Tears streamed down Lily's face as the lawyer continued reading the letter Edward had prepared. "The years we shared were the richest of my life. I watched you grow from a child who carried the weight of the world on small shoulders into a young woman whose compassion will heal others. Your mother gave me an extraordinary gift by allowing me into your lives, and together you taught me what truly matters." Claire, now using a sleek motorized chair that Edward had insisted on, wiped tears from her own eyes. The last 5 years had brought healing none of them had thought possible. Edward had legally recognized Lily as his daughter, giving her his name while respecting the incredible job Claire had done raising her alone. The mansion that had once echoed with emptiness had become filled with music, laughter, and life. Though Edward and Claire had not rekindled their romance, too much time had passed, and their lives had traveled too far apart. They had formed a deep friendship built on forgiveness and shared love for their daughter. "The greatest fortune," the lawyer read, his own voice growing rough with emotion, "is not measured in assets or accounts, but in moments of connection. My life was immeasurably enriched by that rainy afternoon when a young girl couldn't afford a sandwich. She fed my soul when I thought it had withered beyond recovery." After the lawyer departed, Lily and Claire remained in the study, surrounded by photographs chronicling their 5 years as a family holidays. Lily's high school graduation, Ordinary moments made extraordinary by their togetherness. "He was waiting for me," Lily whispered, holding a framed photo of Edward teaching her to play chess. "All those years, he was waiting, and he didn't even know it." Claire reached for her daughter's hand. "And you found him, my brave girl. You brought him home." Outside, rain began to fall softly, pattering against the windows, nature's gentle reminder of beginnings found in the most unexpected places, and the extraordinary power of a simple act of kindness.